Well, hello there. Once again, this is Pastor J.D. Hatfield of the Riverside Christian Fellowship in Hernando, Florida. As always, you can find us on the web at voiceofvision.org. And I'd like to tell you the truth about faith and works. Are people saved by faith alone? Because the Apostle Paul says we are saved by faith alone. But aren't people also saved by their works? Because James says that we're not saved by faith alone. He says faith without works is dead. And lots of people say that this is some kind of contradiction, but it isn't. James and Paul are not contradictory, they're complementary. When Paul talks about being justified by faith, he's talking about being justified in the sight of God. He's talking about being declared righteous based on our faith in the work of Christ. When James talks about being justified by works, he is talking about being justified in the sight of people. He's talking about demonstrating righteousness because of our faith in the work of Christ. And you should say a hearty amen to both of these truths. Here's the difference. Paul is addressing legalism. James is addressing lifelessness. Paul is arguing against works as a condition of salvation. James is arguing for works as a consequence of salvation. Paul is saying that works are not a requirement for salvation. James is saying that works are the result of salvation. Do you need works in order to be saved? No. Do you accomplish works because you are saved? Yes. Do our works deserve, earn, or merit salvation? No. Do our works demonstrate, evidence, and manifest salvation? Yes. It's vitally important that we be crystal clear here. Our works are the fruit of justification, not the root of justification, being declared righteous by God. Now, salvation is never the result of good works, but salvation will always result in good works. Still, works do not get you saved, and works do not keep you saved. The New Testament is quite clear. While Christ's obedience to the law is credited to us, that's called justification. It does not replace our own actual obedience, that's sanctification. God's agenda is to produce obedient children, not merely justified children. Grace does not say, rejoice, you now have no obligations. Rather, it says, rejoice, what you could not do has been credited to you, and the ability you lack has now been given to you. Grow in grace. So, the gospel is meant to produce people who are declared righteous, but who also live righteous. Our union with Christ includes not only the forensic reality of justification, but the experimental reality of regeneration. A saving faith leads to a living faith. Now here's the thing. Both Paul and James mention Abraham to prove their reasoning. In James 2:23, he quotes Genesis 15:6. Abraham believed God and it was counted to him righteousness. So in James 2:23, he quotes Genesis 15:6 as proving his point that Abraham's faith was justified by his works. But Paul quotes Genesis 15:6 in Romans 4:3 to teach justification apart from works. Is James contradicting what Paul says about justification? Not at all. James and Paul are both right. They're addressing two different aspects, two different events in Abraham's life to prove their theological points. Paul speaks of Abraham's faith in the birth of Isaac, which you see in Romans 4:13. But James speaks of Abraham's faith in the offering of Isaac, which you see in James 2:21. Abraham had believed the promise of God that through his seed the Messiah would come. Years later, after Isaac was born, when the test came, he acted in faith, knowing that God would raise Isaac from the dead or whatever God had to do to fulfill his promise. Paul and James are not giving two ways of salvation, but two aspects of one salvation. Paul speaks of the beginning of Abraham's walk of faith, and James speaks of its ongoing demonstration. While faith and works are distinguished from one another, they're never divorced from one another. Salvation is not by works, but for works. A new birth means a new life. Works do not get you saved, and works do not keep you saved, but works are the evidence that you are saved. James and Paul are not contradictory, they're complementary. Paul is right. Works cannot and do not save you. But James is also right. Faith without works is dead, and a dead faith cannot be a born-again faith. It's not a saving faith. Because saving faith is a gift from God, and it leads to a life lived for God. Saved people won't live perfectly. but they will live purposefully. Your life tells the true story about what you think is true for you. Your life reveals your truth, and that's the truth about faith and works. Well, there you have it. I hope this message was very helpful to you. Until next time, we'll see you here, there, or in the air. God bless you.